All right, welcome back to Burn the Ship, the podcast we connect entrepreneurs to professionals to help you go all in on your business. I'm your host, Ezra Brown. Without further ado, I'm going to allow my guest to introduce herself.
Oh, thank you so much, Ezra. Hi, I'm Allison Smith. The name of my company is called the IVRvoice.com. And long story short, I am a telephone voice. So I'm a voice talent who specializes in voicing telephone systems. Anytime you call a company and you get an automated voice saying something like, "Thank you for calling PetSmart. For Pets Hotel, press 1. For Grooming Salon, press 2." That's me. So I am the voice of PetSmart and Samsung, State Farm Insurance, Kennedy Space Center. So yeah, I'm on a lot of different systems, and I've voiced the core prompts for Cisco, Mitel, ShoreTel, a lot of the big phone companies. So that is my niche, and that's what I do.
Allison, that is awesome. Thank you for coming on, first and foremost. I appreciate
Yeah,
you taking time out of your day to join us and talk about your story. You
sure.
know, what you do is very, very niche specific. I've never heard of anybody in the industry. You are the first that I've gotten to hear that on the podcast, especially.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and then with IVR, kind of give us a story of how this started, kind of how you knew you had something, how you had that it factor to where it made you different than the next person that was doing it in
Right.
your
Good
industry.
question. So I'm sort of a retired actor. So I started off in acting. I have a degree in theater. And so I did that for a long time. Did a lot of film and commercials that were filmed here in Calgary, where I live. And then I just started to branch off into doing radio commercials just as a way of paying the bills in between acting jobs. And that took over as my mainstay. The first voiceover job was with a radio station. They didn't even have money to pay me. And so they paid me off in concert tickets and albums and stuff like that. But they kept everything I did on a professional reel. And yes, it was a reel to reel back then. And then I was able to take that and market it to different sound studios and ad agencies. So I did a lot of radio commercials, and I guess I just sort of have an everyday approachable sound. There's a lot of people that sound a lot more DJ style, but I think if you have just sort of a warm, professional, personable sound, it's actually very marketable. So I did
Right.
a lot of radio, and then I was approached by a very small phone company in Alabama who wanted me as their voice of their VoIP system, so voice over internet protocol
Hmm.
phone system called Asterisk, which turned into the fastest growing telephony platform in the world at one point. So when I started voicing prompts for them, it led to literally users all around the world wanting me to do custom prompts for them. So that sort of put me on the map with IVR. And then just it snowballed. Word of mouth is quite extraordinary in this industry. So if you do a good job for one bigger company, word kind of gets around. And so, yeah, it's led to a really interesting career. It's different every day. I
Right.
do prompts for a great big huge health network called St. Francis Healthcare, so I could be doing those prompts in the morning. And then, believe it or not, I have a company that hires me to do reminder phone calls for registered felons who have not checked in with their parole officer. So, so yeah, I mean, I voice those and I sort of go, wow, this is a strange dichotomy. Yeah, I really enjoy it. I'm even the voice of a lot of automated platforms like elevator systems, and I am a talking toilet in Japan, believe it or not. They
That's
had
awesome.
a model of toilet and they thought they needed English prompts to come out of it. So there you go. That's my claim to fame,
That's
sort of.
awesome.
Yeah.
Allison, what's crazy is I've definitely heard your voice. It sounds
Yeah.
familiar. Like as we're
Oh,
sitting here
yeah.
talking, I've heard your voice somewhere through my time, especially voice automation is very,
Yes.
very prominent nowadays.
Yes. Yeah. If you've driven
It's
through
boomed in the last
the
it's boomed in the
Detroit
last
Windsor
5 years.
Tunnel. Yeah, I'm the voice on their automated payment system if you go through the Detroit Windsor Tunnel. So yeah. Sorry, you're about to say something.
But no, yeah, that's what I was about to say. And then, like in the last 5 years, I feel like voice automation well, actually, let's see, 6 years now. Let's see, whenever
Hmm.
went into college, when I first got into college, I
Yeah.
feel like voice automation started to kind of take over, like pizza places, Subways, Jersey Mike's. You can't call in and order there anymore. It goes
Right.
to some online platform versus
Yeah.
going in store nowadays. Waffle House went to it here in Georgia. That's a big thing. Was something you call in a Waffle House, order it 10 o'clock at night, and it would be ready when you
Yeah.
got there at 10:15. Now you
Yes.
got to put it in online, or you got to call an automated person and talk to them. It's not the
That's
same
right.
voice. It's a definitely a changing industry. Can you kind of tell me some things that have changed for you, really, since you started? Because
Yeah.
I'm sure, because you've been a part of a rapid evolvement.
Yeah, I have. Yeah. So I would say, even as recently as maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it really started to change with AI. And at first I thought, oh, this is great. I'm just going to jump on this and become an AI voice. It's almost as though I kind of knew that perhaps it might be a good idea to have voice clones built of my voice. So I've
Hmm.
actually approached a couple of companies that specialize in doing that, and I have. So I'm a replicated voice or a cloned voice on Murph AI and 11 Labs, which is probably one of the bigger companies. But the kind of sinister twist that it's taken in the industry is that voiceover has been taken over by AI, and particularly Chat GPT is so realistic. And there's even emotional nuances that it's capable of doing that it wasn't capable of even 4 years ago, that it
Right.
is now threatening to take over the voiceover industry. As an example, I have a colleague that does e-learning modules. So whenever you train in any industry, you're usually sent online to take a course. So he voices a lot of those for the oil and gas industry, which is, of course, very, very big here in Alberta. And he is being replaced by AI. His bookings are down about 80%. It's really sad. So he's having to look for work in other industries just because when they launch an e-learning program, they use an AI voice, and 9 times out of 10, the client will say, "Oh, let's just use that AI voice," and they usually name it as well. They're like, "Let's go with George, the AI voice." So, unfortunately, it means that actual humans are a little bit out of business and being replaced. I'm
Right.
not too panicked about it simply because I seem to have so many clients grandfathered in that I think I'm probably going to be okay. Also, I am contemplating semi-retirement, so this has maybe come along at just the right moment, but it's definitely changed the industry. It's made my uh, mentoring of voice talent, because I do get approached a few times a week by people who want to get into voiceover. And I
Right.
always try to be as encouraging as possible, but I want to be as realistic as possible too. So, yeah, a big part of what I think it's all about is pivoting somewhat, still being a voice talent, but offering almost like a synthetic version of yourself
Right.
available for when the bots eventually take over. I don't want to sound too pessimistic about it, but yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it's
But
yeah,
no, but that's a true
affecting.
thing though. That's a true thing. Like
Mhm.
salespeople will
Yeah.
no longer be a thing whenever that happens. You know what I mean?
That's exactly it. Yeah. Even lawyers are panicking because so much of their boilerplate agreements that they draft up and charge a lot of money to do so can be put together by AI now. So, yeah.
The
Yeah.
only thing AI can't do is argue for you in the courtroom. That's what they can
Exactly.
do.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So, the next step to that whole voice cloning thing is I had the idea that I would take my 25 years worth of sound files, and there's a lot of them, and have a speech scientist build that into my own AI, which I could then sell, and then my heirs could probably take over and profit from. So smart, hopefully, yeah. It's in the planning stages. So there you go.
Look, we're look that would be that's something that I think it would be very valuable, especially with
Yeah,
your voice
I
that's already
think so.
been there. That people are like, how do I get Allison's voice? How do I get Allison back on
Yeah,
here? You
exactly.
know,
That's exactly it. Yeah. Hmm.
and especially because our voices change as we get older. Like
They sure do. Yeah. Yeah,
so
exactly.
they're
So
like, I
yeah.
want to replicate that exact sound. How do I get it? It's like, well, that sound, I don't know, can't do that
Yeah.
anymore. But no, that's awesome.
Exactly.
And
I
so
don't know who it was I saw being interviewed. She was a politician down in the US where you are, and she had some sort of degenerative disease. Her name escapes me, but she had the foresight to have a voice clone built of her voice before she lost the ability to speak. And now she uses a speech utility, much like Stephen Hawking used
right,
way back in the day,
right,
but it is her actual voice with her own inflection and her own natural cadence, which is extraordinary. So it's almost as though she has perpetuated her voice into perpetuity, which is
right.
kind
No,
of
that
cool when you think about
yeah,
it.
no, that's definitely incredible. And what would you say,
Hmm.
like, so you've kind of you've watched this industry evolve through time, and then as we talk about AI and it kind of coming in and doing these things, what would you say is that thing that keeps you around besides your longevity clients that you've had for 20 years? What
Yeah.
about those people that you've just acquired over that last 5-10 year span? What makes you stand over the AI to them? You know what I mean? Because I'm sure there's some good ones in there that,
Yeah.
but you're separate yourself. What makes you do that?
Good question. I think, yeah, I have that longevity. So I have a really big established clientele. I think the more recent clients are probably the more challenging to keep on board,
Right.
especially with the novelty of AI. I think it's a pendulum like everything is. And I think right now it's really cool to play around with it and to save money by not hiring a voice talent. I've actually read a couple of articles that say it's actually in the long term probably cheaper to have an established voice talent that you can turn to in short notice who cuts you, a special price for volume. It's probably cheaper to use an actual human than an AI. But yeah, it's the newer clients that are looking to perhaps test that out and may not come back, or they may, I don't know. The
Right.
interesting thing is one of my clients at PetSmart, I'm hired by a few different divisions, but one of them asked me if there is a voice clone available of me. And I thought that's a weird question. But during our phone call, I found out that they were phasing out their phone system and they were looking to upgrade everything. So at that juncture, they want to perhaps maybe use my existing sound files that I've kept for them, or they're looking into an AI alternative. I'd rather they used an AI built on me. I can actually, I do profit from the sale of those voice clones. It's
Right.
not as much as I would make if I recorded it from the ground up.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting. But there's so many different areas of voiceover. There's, TV and radio broadcast voicing. That's kind of one thing that people do. There's e-learning, there's anime and video game voicing, and then there's what I do, which is like automation, IVR, on hold systems, that kind of thing. And I think my particular discipline is probably more prone to being taken over by AI just because most often there isn't a big emotional component to it. There can be, when I voice for the healthcare industry, often they want a very compassionate, understanding, calming tone. But AI is capable of doing that too. So
Right.
yeah, it's complex. It really is.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's different. And yeah. And what would you say? Like, obviously, when you first got into business, obviously doing it yourself, what did you struggle with? The most? Because obviously the voice was never an issue, but
Right. Yeah.
it's the business side of it. What did you struggle with? You may still be maybe still be something that you still struggle with. But what
Right,
was it?
exactly. Well, I'll tell you this, all home-based voice talent and almost all voice talent have their own home studios. We're talent first, so that's the skill that we know that we have. But I had to learn audio engineering pretty much from the ground up. The program that I use is not complex. I don't need to use anything as complicated as Pro Tools or anything, wild like that, because I'm not doing
Right.
big multi-track mixing. So I actually use a pretty basic program, but I had to learn things like acoustics and how to set up the room properly so that it's sound friendly. You're nodding, this because you do a podcast. So there's certain things you need to do to, yeah, look at all that curtains. Yeah. So yeah, stuff like audio production is stuff that I've had to learn, but also just the basic business stuff. I probably would have been great taking some courses in business and that sort of thing. You learn through experience about invoicing and setting money aside for taxes, just kind of the basic stuff that entrepreneurs need to know how to do.
Right.
And yeah, so there's all that you just sort of wear several hats and you learn on the fly. But I work best by myself. I have actually been represented by many agents, and I find that I don't do well thrown into a pool with a bunch of other voice talent. So usually when young voice talent approach me for some advice about what to do, I always say don't do the pay to play online agencies because you will pay to get into their roster and you will be submitting your audition with literally hundreds of other talent. And it's very hard to rise to the top of that. So
Mm-hmm.
I have always, yeah, I've always looked for my own work and I've always marketed myself and done my own advertising. Probably not to success all the time. You know, that's not my area, but you
Right.
kind of have to wear a bunch of different hats and do it all yourself.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, that's super awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And then, kind of, what would you say was the thing that's, besides your voice, because obviously this is what got you here. But besides your voice, what have you done really well that kind of helped you grow this business? I mean, being persistent. Obviously, we're all persistent. We're persistent if we make it.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Ezra, I've always joked with friends that they'll write on my tombstone, she got back to us quickly. So, believe it or not, I think a lot of the appeal of me is that I respond quickly when people message me, and I always follow through and make sure that they're happy with what I've recorded, and I stand by what I do. And if there's anything that needs tweaking, I will redo it until they're happy, pretty much. So it's just, I don't know, it's kind of basic service. And you're in the service industry as well. You understand that it's, yeah, we're all salespeople and it's all about service and making sure that the
Right.
client is happy enough to stay with you. It sounds kind of old timey and cliche, but really that's the secret sauce is
Yeah.
making the customer feel heard and valued. And yeah, it's really no more complex than that.
Yeah. No, you're right. And just like they say, hard work and dedication. It's not. It is cliche, but it's not at all because it's in everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
you know, you and I met through LinkedIn, and I still think that LinkedIn is a really, really valuable tool for somebody in my industry. I talk to other people that go, really? I don't do all that well on LinkedIn. I find that I do targeted searches of people who either sell telephone systems and who are frustrated about having to put the prompts on the system themselves
right.
as a temporary thing. And 20 years later, this telco installation guy, his voice is still on his customer's system. So
Right.
I reach out to these guys and they're really relieved to meet me because they don't like doing the voicing and they'd rather just have somebody to offload it onto. So
Right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I'll search for those guys. Um, I'll search for IVR designers, people that actually design the system at the at the ground level.
Right.
And sometimes marketing people also within companies are in charge of the direction of their phone system. So it's tricky to know who to approach, but I've done really well on LinkedIn. I find it's a great tool just to
No,
find people in your
absolutely.
industry. Yeah.
Everything can be good. This is one thing that I'm starting to notice a little bit more as I'm getting older. Is you can pull juice, you can squeeze juice out of any fruit. You know, as how
Yes.
as for just a simpler terms of it, but you can get something from anywhere you go, anybody you're around. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what it is, what they do. Me. I don't need to know how you frame a house, but I could learn something from somebody that frames a house that could help me on
Absolutely.
my
Yeah.
next business venture that I don't know. That I don't know in the future. The next person I walk up to sell to could be that person.
Right. That's
The next
exactly
person I
it.
could sell to could do IVR, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, you
I
know,
happen to know somebody.
and it's
Well, you know
crazy.
what? Your secret sauce with this podcast, and I've listened to a few episodes. There really is such a wide variety of people that you've interviewed, which is great. I think that
Hmm.
keeps the listeners' interest up. And the other thing is that in our initial conversation, you actually really didn't need to know too much about me. You just sort
Yeah,
of found me on LinkedIn,
yeah,
thought, oh, she might be interesting. And that shows a genuine curiosity, which you
yeah.
actually sometimes don't hear in podcasts. You're a
Right. No,
curious guy.
absolutely. Like I don't want to know, on my short phone call because that's why we try to make them 5 10 minutes. We used to do them for 30 minutes, but like
Yeah,
then we get on the podcast, I already know everything about everything that you do. Like I don't want to know everything about IVR right before I
yeah,
get on the podcast. I want to learn it as I get to sit here because then it gives me something to sit here and talk about with you that we
yes,
already haven't talked about to where it's some bland conversation where me and you are actually sitting here having a real one to one as we're networking.
yes, for sure. Yeah.
And
And I have a sort of an interesting sideline of vocal coaching. So I actually have coached some podcasters and public speakers. And it's amazing how many podcasts I listen to where this person is obviously interested in the topic, but they're just reading off the page. And it's
Right.
very, oh, yeah, they're not conveying their passion or their interest in the topic. It's just, it seems obvious.
It's like
But
me reading
yeah,
in front of class whenever I was in college. Me reading out of my
right,
book. I do not want to study. My name is Ezra.
right,
you
right,
know.
exactly. Yeah. So I
But no,
just,
that's
yeah,
that's that's something that here we luckily we have a viral YouTube channel that we also do. I'll tell you the name. I'll tell you a bunch about it after we act like a
yeah,
holes. But so it's kind of easier for us to get on camera and do this. And then it's
yes,
what we do day to day. We talk to people anyway. We sit here and have conversations with people just like you yourself. It's just structured a little different here. Usually I'm asking what's a great referral partner for you because I ask that in here as well. But typically
mm,
people will tell me as we go along the story. Sometimes you don't even have to ask. Like yours, I have a very good idea of what it is. Telecom people are probably very good for you. Um,
yes,
things like that
absolutely.
would be awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but then we ask how you grew your business. And that was going to be my next question is how do you grow your business? Obviously you're going through LinkedIn and doing things like that, but it can't be easy just to find, a word of mouth referral to what you do, giving them those
yeah,
voiceovers or whatever they need for that. That can't be an easy referral to be given,
right,
like,
exactly.
because you got to go up such a different chain of command than what I have to go through. Like me, I'm going to the decision maker. You're going to somebody that's a decision maker in a department where that's like what
Yes.
they're doing,
Yep.
So,
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah.
so it's kind of
Yeah.
how have you grown this business over this time? I know there's everybody says I've worked hard, but no, how has it been? Because it's definitely you had to be a cultivation of things.
Yeah. I think it's a formula of effort plus time. I think time is, a great thing. I was saying to a couple of younger women that I go to the same yoga studio with, and they were contemplating changing careers. And I just said to them, well, just so you know, I feel like I had to spend a good 20 years just to hit my stride, just
Right,
to really gain some momentum and to become kind of a little bit of a big fish in this industry. They were very
right,
discouraged by hearing that. They were thinking, oh, I'm going to put in like 3 or 4 years and be expert. And
right,
that may happen, but generally, any freelancers I've known, any graphic designers, any script writers, playwrights, it's a time thing too. It is just sticking with it for 20 years and putting in the effort, and before you know it, you'll be an overnight success 25 years later. Yeah, I wish there was a better answer for that, but yeah, I think it is an effort plus time and persistence and genuinely loving what you do. I get excited every time I know I'm going to get in front of the microphone. To me, it's just like a big thing, and I love doing it.
right.
So, yeah, I was hoping to stick with it maybe a few more years full time, but this is totally okay. My husband's been urging me to kind of throttle back and retire with him. So I'm just going to record for anybody who wants it, but don't chase it as much as I used to. And stop and smell the dang roses, you know?
Absolutely, no, I love it. And what has been your favorite part of this journey?
Gosh, meeting people in so many different industries. It's unbelievable. I've done great big huge insurance company IVRs, and I've done little tiny mom and pop dry cleaners, and they're all fun to do, and they all require something different, and not everybody requires the same approach. I
Right,
did have a client that was a very, very small business, I think in Oregon, and they had me redo it because I sounded too fancy. I sounded too big city and too alienating. So you really have to figure out who your client is. You
right.
can do a lot of research online to get a feel with, what
But you
they're
never know
like.
until you talk to them.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And if you misguess, sometimes I've done stuff for banks where I thought, banking is serious, money is serious, investments are super serious, so I must be very serious in business life. Well, if you've listened, if you dialed into your own bank, they are taking a really relaxed, accessible tone to their voices on their IVRs. So they
Hmm.
make money as less scary and investing is approachable to everybody, not just millionaires. So it's interesting how industries change, and so does the style of voiceovers. You would probably be a big hit doing voiceovers, believe it or not, because people are looking for that sort of casual, local, everyday guy, a guy that sounds like a guy. You sound like a guy. Yeah.
No, absolutely, that makes sense. No, a million percent. And then the last thing I give is always let my guests tell everybody where they're, where to find it, where the people need to find you. And then the last thing is you leave us with the last word as well.
Okay. So my website is theIVRvoice.com. Just message me if anybody has any phone systems or anything they need voiced. I also do consulting as well. So if you have an older phone system, you have a feeling that you need to change things up, I do listen to your existing system, recommend changes. I can rewrite the script and then, of course, voice it for people. So if people went on theIVRvoice.com and messaged me, that's how that would happen. Um, Gee, I don't know. A final thought.
I'll let you
I
think on it. I'll
think,
let you think on it. Hang on. I'll let you think.
sure.
Everybody go follow. Everybody go check in with her. She's awesome. This has been a great time sitting down with her. Thank her for very much for coming and sitting down with us. Um, Last word.
Last word. Okay. So I think in the last few years, I've really struggled with relevance. And so I think that would be my messaging to people is that don't give up doing what you love doing. And especially if you're experiencing some success in it, as I was. But you need to keep your ear to the ground and really, really watch your industry for any kind of changes. And it doesn't mean that you need to abandon what you've been doing, but think about pivoting and think about keeping yourself relevant in your industry, if that makes sense.
It does definitely. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on and
Thank you
burning the
so
ship.
much, Ezra.